What's up, guys? My name is Callum Shaw, and I did not sleep very well last night, nor am I particularly skilled at video editing, and as a result, you are likely going to get a very frustrating video today, so I thank you in advance for bearing with me. Today, we're going to talk about how to use negative language, negative thoughts to our advantage. This is going to be probably an interesting video and one that you may not actually have heard very much of before, because I don't think this is something that gets covered, and especially doesn't really get covered in this way. So this is kind of from a lifetime of experience of having a little bit of like a negative internal dialogue that I have sort of learned to overcome. So this is sort of on the heels of, I am 28 years old now. Right? Yeah, something like that. And when I was 18 to kind of 21, 22, I dealt with a lot of sort of anxiety and depression type stuff and some pretty negative thoughts. And one of the things that I found that was sort of very helpful was being able to have language that I could actually connect with. And what that means is, I'm sure for anybody that isn't really feeling very good right now, you've had somebody that has, been very, positive, or you'll see social media where people are, overly enthusiastic, and they're like, yeah, fitness, you can do it, just be grateful for this and that and whatever. But what if you don't really feel particularly grateful? What if everything kind of feels like crap? So this is one of those things where like it's going to seem a bit nihilistic, but there is like a positive sort of spin and a positive outcome from this practice. And this is kind of how I think, and the way that I tend to communicate with my clients is in sort of a language that speaks to feeling kind of negative in the moment with an optimistic outlook. So that I think kind of perfectly sums up how I am as a coach and as a person. I am sort of very aware of how bad things can be, but always am assuming that things will improve if you work on them and you make them a priority and a focus. So before we go any further, it would mean the world to me if you could hit that thumbs up button below, like the video, subscribe to the channel. I would love it if you would continue to listen to the nonsense that comes out of my face. So the first thing that we're going to talk about, so negative language can be a really powerful, positive tool if you use it in the right way. So instead of, I find when people are not feeling good, trying to think of like, well, what are you grateful for? Or, what makes you happy? When somebody's in, not a great place, that can be a really unhelpful thing, because the reality is when you really don't feel good, it can often be very challenging to think of anything that does make you happy. And then you end up feeling more frustrated and more sad and more like, for lack of a better word, broken, because you feel like you can't get up and you feel like you can't experience these things that a lot of other people apparently can feel, right? So the way that I like to look at this problem is not necessarily what makes me feel good, it's what makes me feel less bad. So are those the same? Yes. But if you feel bad, it's understandable for your brain to think like, okay, what makes me feel less bad, as opposed to what makes me feel good? Because the difference is, if I feel bad, it's easy for me to feel less bad because all I have to do is move this way on the scale. But if I'm trying to get from feeling bad to feeling good, there's a big divide in the middle here, right? There's a huge sort of span that we need to be able to cover before we can go from feeling bad to feeling good. So it's a really important tool and a really important sort of way of training your mind. We're not trying to make things good. We're trying to make them suck less. So it's important to think, when we're trying to get ourselves to do positive things, that we are not framing it in a way that seems foreign or disingenuous. And I find that a lot of things, especially in fitness, we spend so much time, and the industry spends so much time advertising, you're going to feel terrific. The reality is, if you don't feel good, it is way better to feel less bad than it is to try to feel good and fail at it. So we want to try and get into this cycle of making things progressively less bad, because it's not until you get to this sort of midpoint on the spectrum where you're I'm past the margin where I feel bad, that I can actually look on the other side of the scale and say, oh, I get it. I get how I could go from here to feeling good. But if we're trying to go from here to here, it's too big a gap. And it's too big a gap, and we're essentially talking about, like, I have apples, I wanted oranges. There's no way that I can make this apple this orange. But if we make the apple this is a terrible example, but I think you know what I'm getting at here. We're not trying to, drastically change how you feel in one day. What we're trying to do is get you to the... That was such a garbage example. I don't have a good analogy here, but all I want you to focus on is an approachable way to get yourself from feeling terrible to feeling bad to feeling okay to feeling fine to feeling good. Like, there is a whole spectrum that we need to get across before we get to feeling good, and that is built on the steps that we take from point A to point B. Okay? So, we are going to talk about a concept that I like to call compounding effort. So, compounding effort is basically the idea that when we start doing small things that are good for us, it opens the door to do more things that are good for us, and these things can get larger and larger and larger and get better and better for us. And the only way that we're able to actually do these things that are better for us is by starting with very small steps. So, I want you to think of this. Let's use the inverse, a really negative example of compounding, credit card debt. So let's say I have a balance on my credit card of $1,000 and my credit card company charges me 20% interest or whatever it is, right? So my credit card company in the first month will charge me something like $20 on my $1,000 balance if I don't pay it off at all. The next month, they're going to charge me interest on my $1,020. The month after that, they're going to charge me 20% interest on my $1,045. And basically what happens is every time you get charged interest on top of your initial thing, the pot grows or the pile grows, and it becomes a bigger and bigger problem over time. If we use that same example in a more positive way, right? I want you to think of, if you're feeling terrible, and we can make you feel slightly less terrible by doing something that's pretty good for you, right? Like, let's say you feel terrible and you do nothing, and now we go from you feel terrible, but now you go for a walk every day. The next day you wake up having been for a walk the day before, and you feel a little bit less anxious. Now you're feeling a little bit less anxious, and you feel a little bit more interested in cooking. So, you go to your fridge and you open the door, and now you've eaten some food today. That's great. The next day, you've eaten some food and you've been for a walk. And now we're thinking, okay, maybe I'm not just going to eat, pizza pops today. I'm going to actually have some vegetables with my pizza pops. So now, the day after that, you've had pizza pops and some vegetables and gone for a walk. And then we go again and again and again and again. And we add stuff to it until eventually we've made enough small changes over time that we went from not eating and not going for a walk and sitting on the couch and watching Callum on YouTube all day to we're going outside, we don't have to listen to Callum anymore because we feel great about ourselves, we're eating really well, we're exercising regularly, we're sleeping perfectly, and now we're, well on our way to having a fulfilled and healthy life where we feel terrific. Like, it's very challenging to go from sitting on the couch feeling like shit about yourself to getting off the couch and feeling great. There's a lot of stuff in between that, right? And the only way that you can get there is by adding layers to it one day at a time, right? In the same way that when we have a big debt problem, right, and we have to add to it every day over time, in order for that to become a giant insurmountable thing that we can't get out from under. So again, these are sort of two sides to the same coin. Sorry, it is not a good analogy day. Shit. The idea is we want to build a foundation of really simple stuff that is a little bit good for us before we try to approach things that are more advanced and more challenging and take more out of us. Because if we don't have the basics down, like getting off the couch and going for a walk, or getting to bed at a reasonable time without watching stuff on your phone, like if we can't do some of the small basic stuff that just makes like anxiety and depression a little bit better, the likelihood of you being able to stick to a really intense exercise regime is unlikely at best, and probably on the impossible side of the spectrum. So we want to try and build a foundation of really sustainable, simple habits that you can utilize anywhere, that cost no money or very little money, and that give you a lot of bang for your buck. So what I would encourage you to do, if you're not doing it already, is at least every day leave your house. Go for a walk for at least 10, start with 5 minutes, like go around the block, but try and work your way up to a half hour or an hour where you're getting outside and you're getting some fresh air, and ideally not just drowning yourself in social media and stuff that's going to make you more kind of anxious and feel bad about yourself. We want to try and build a solid base of things that you feel good about, because once we have a floor of positive stuff that we can actually start to jump on and run on, it's much easier to work out. So guys, thanks for bearing with me. If that was helpful, please subscribe to the channel, hit the like below, leave me a comment. If you have an idea for a future video, please feel free to email us anytime at info@strongtoronto.ca. We're always looking for new ideas for content. I hope you have an excellent rest of your day, and please go outside. It's it might be cold, but I guarantee you'll feel better for it. Awesome. Thank you so much for watching. Peace.